Thank you very much for that introduction, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be here. If you can't tell, I'm actually an American, so I've done a lot in the waste and biogas space over my career in the U.S. and joined the Danish government about a year ago to use that network and try to help advance this industry. I've followed Quebec's progress on RNG over the years from my seat back in the States. I'm glad to see you all here trying to move this industry forward. So with that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to put a lot of information up in about the next 15 to 20 minutes, and I apologize. I will be around for the rest of today and tomorrow as well, so please feel free to find me and ask some questions or have some conversation, as I don't know that we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A after we're done here. First and foremost, I was born in Buffalo. I don't know if there's any hockey fans in here, but I would imagine there are. So I had to start by putting this up because I moved to Buffalo as an 11-year-old in 1976. And of course, these were my heroes on the Buffalo Sabres. So if you've never heard of the French Connection before, they were rock stars in the Buffalo hockey arena. So, as Laurent mentioned, I'm actually here representing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark and specifically the Danish Trade Council. But I'm also here as part of a program that is a 3-year funded program from Denmark called Biogas Go Global. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's important to note. I'm actually working closely with my colleagues from the Danish Energy Agency and 2 innovation groups called Agribusiness Park and Invium. And we're trying to use this triple helix approach to advance the biogas sector, again, in the United States, Canada, and in all honesty, throughout the world. My role is a little bit more on the commercial side and on the networking side. My colleagues at the Energy Agency are more interfacing with people on policy dialogue and government-to-government cooperation. And then the other folks are working on research, development, and demonstration. And already through my conversations over the last day, I think I found some good opportunities where we may be able to do some of this knowledge sharing between Quebec and Denmark. So let's just start. I think some of you may be aware, Denmark, as of December of 2019, has made a very aggressive climate reduction goal of 70% reduction of GHGs by 2030. This is not going to be easy to meet, and they are the first ones to admit that. But they've called it, at least my friend at the Energy Agency calls it the Danish moonshot. They're not quite sure how they're going to get there, but that doesn't mean they don't want to set that target and go after it. Along with the national government and the parliament setting that, the Danish Ag and Food Council, which represents the food production industry in Denmark, has also set a very aggressive target on their own to be climate neutral in 2050. So again, they are open to working with others to try to figure out this path forward. It sounds like Quebec has some very ambitious goals as well. We'll look forward to finding some synergies in that. So let's just do a little bit, give you the lay of the land here. Denmark is about little over 5.5 million people. You can see this kind of the status of the biogas projects. Up until 2012, most of these projects were electricity generating. On the farm level, they were usually one farm projects. But, and as I'll get into in a minute, since 2012, there's been a real uptick in large centralized biogas plants that are producing RNG and injecting it into the grid. Nature Energy is the leader in that in Denmark. And an important point here, which I'll come back to, is that there's very strong agricultural roots in Denmark. About 2/3 of the country is under agricultural production. There is a very large dairy population and an even larger hog population. Denmark's really known for its pork. And so attention to soil and water quality and keeping the land healthy is a ethos in Denmark. So these projects are not just being done from an energy energy perspective. So, and this is a good illustration of that. I'm not going to spend much time, but the top bar there is actual ag production in Denmark. And so since 1990, the country has been able to decouple production and negative environmental impact. So all those lines going down are nitrogen levels, phosphorus levels, some of the negatives that can come from agricultural production. And so that's all I wanted to say about that is it can be done, and it's one of the things that have helped drive the biogas sector forward in Denmark. So, as was alluded to already, Denmark is one of the European leaders in RNG. Laurent mentioned that it's now 12.7, but if we look at 2019 on an average, it was 11% of gas consumption in Denmark was coming from renewable natural gas. This is coming from 33 plants that have been built since 2012, so there's been a very steep curve in the growth of these large projects that are somewhere between 300,000 and 1 million tons per year of biomass. One of the things that's important, the RNG is mainly produced from manure, food waste, and other organic waste streams. That has given it a high value in the European market. So even in some of the neighboring countries like Sweden and Germany, this commands a higher level of premium than some of the RNG that comes a little bit more from energy crops. And so that's been an important driver as well. As was mentioned, the expectation is that between 2025 and 2030, the level of RNG in the grid will go up to 25 to 30%. That is not just a pipe dream. There are a number of projects that have already been financed and approved. Those have to be built by 2022 in order to get the federal subsidy that exists right now. So that is a very firm estimate in terms of where things will be in another 2 years. After that, to be honest, the future is a little bit uncertain as the country is reevaluating its current subsidy scheme and may take a different path after that level of projects or those crop of projects are brought online. So there's basically what I've been saying in a chart. The one that I haven't really touched on yet, and again, this is not necessarily in any kind of a formal goal, but the analysis has been done, and folks within the Energy Agency in Denmark expect that there is the technical capability to have 100% of the grid be green gas. So I'm not using RNG here because we're now talking about hydrogen, we're talking about methanized gas, we're talking about some other green gases that will have to come into play in order to meet that 100% goal. I think this is an important one. I've heard a lot of talk about electrification over the last first part of today. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this. I just want to draw your attention to the yellow box. Of course, electrification has a role to play, and there's no doubt about it. But this is an analysis that was done by the Danish Energy Agency to say, even with very aggressive assumptions that we can electrify all the cars in Denmark and electrify all the low temperature manufacturing and heating needs, there is still going to be upwards of 25% or more that cannot be solved through electrification. So there has to be additional options, and we can't put all of our eggs in that electrification basket if we truly want to make a major impact. So why has biogas growth moved forward in Denmark? Certainly part of it and a good goal of this is to transform the energy sector. The drive to try to reduce imported fuels, a lot of natural gas comes down from Russia and other places. Denmark does have its own supplies, but a lot of it also comes from others. Try to increase energy security. But again, this is, I heard some earlier speakers talking about the circular economy and the importance of looking at this from a holistic picture. That's certainly been the case in Denmark, and especially with the agricultural sector, as I mentioned earlier. This is seen as an integrated approach to deal with waste, produce renewable energy, recycle nutrients, and all of this set of policies has been put forward over the last 10 or 20 years to get to that. Obviously now with the new climate law, that's even more of a driver, is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously job creation and the security of the agricultural sector in Denmark are always important goals, as I know they are here in Quebec as well. And then an export of know-how. Denmark, as I said, is a relatively small country. There's a lot of know-how there. But the companies are starting to look elsewhere to bring that value to other countries. And so it's been a mix of different policies and programs that have allowed Denmark to get to this point. There's been political initiatives, really a professionalization of the industry, and I think Guillaume and Nature Energy are a great example of that. Utilizing the existing energy infrastructure. Denmark has a very robust natural gas grid, and they've used that to help move this industry forward. Obviously, a government subsidy has helped quite a bit. Good collaboration across the sectors that are involved in this. And not least as important is farmer buy-in. One of the things that I read an article, I think maybe just a few weeks ago here, that there's a cooperative that's forming in Quebec, and that was great to see, because that is one of the driving models for those large-scale projects that I mentioned earlier, are groups of between 50 and 150 farmers in Denmark getting together, having a formal collaborative, taking an equity position in projects sometimes, but being involved in the growth of those projects. So I think this might actually be a little repetitive to what I just said, so I'm going to move beyond that one. Yeah. So, and again, this is more just again a picture of that kind of circular economy. The people that I work with have told me again and again that as important in Denmark is the recycling of nutrients and the production of organic fertilizer that can be used on cropland. That has been as important a driver there as the renewable energy component. And I've been preaching this in the U.S. for a long time. That's part of the reason that I was happy to join Denmark, because I think they really live that ethos there. And I think it's really important because for most of you who are in here, I think you're more in the energy side. If we're just comparing biogas and RNG energy to other sources of energy, sometimes it's very hard to make the case because it is more expensive. But I will tell you, I think the benefits are much, much more when we talk about this type where you're dealing with waste streams, you're dealing with some other negative impacts of these things while we're producing renewable energy. This just provides a little bit of insight into the typical makeup going into a digester in Denmark. Slurry is either dairy or hog manure. That's what that is. Usually somewhere in the maybe 2/3 to 70% are manure, and then the rest is made up of source-separated organic materials from households, from restaurants, from food production, a little bit of straw that's used for bedding animals that might be mixed with manure. But this has really been kind of the cornerstone of the Danish biogas model, is co-digestion. And for a lot of different reasons, it makes a lot of sense. You know, as this industry has grown, there definitely is also growing interest in bringing in organics even from other countries. So in Norway, there's a lot of fish processing. Some of that waste is starting to make its way to Denmark. And they're starting to look at more of the hard-to-digest materials. Straw is a good example. That is not something you typically want to put into a digester, but they're starting to develop the techniques and systems to be able to digest that as well. Another important point, because the issue of energy crops often comes up, that in Denmark, you're limited now to no more than 12% energy crops, but the government is thinking about cutting that in half to probably 6% very soon. So again, these are to make a couple of points. Co-digestion enhances the biogas yield. It diversifies your supply and provides a more stable digestion process. I just wanted to show on the right, there's a company in Denmark that called Biomethane that currently has a food waste pretreatment system. They produce a biopulp that gets delivered to digester plants all throughout the country and is an excellent source of energy and nutrients. And then from a circular economy standpoint, again, I'm not going to go through all these because I've touched on the points for the most part, but Denmark has banned organic landfills for the last 20 plus years. There's a strong drive to recycle a lot of the municipal solid waste. You must adhere to the waste hierarchy according to the European Union. And the most important one here, and the one I'll end with, is that the Danish EPA has done exhaustive studies of the digestate, the leftover from the digester, and that they have shown does not pose a health or environmental issue and can be used on cropland. And unfortunately, a lot of things from Denmark, as you can imagine, are in Danish, but these regulations and results we're going to be translating into English so I can make that available to people, because I think that's really important. So this is somewhat of a summary slide where the point here is just to show, and I went through a lot of these already, that there has been a progressive growth of different policies and incentives over the last 10 plus years. Some of the most important, of course, are the biomethane subsidy scheme that you see there in the upper left, and that started in 2012. But there's a lot of interacting policies that have helped move this industry forward. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to be fairly quick. Another, let's see here. I know power to gas has been a big discussion. Denmark actually has a lot of competency in this. There's a lot of pilot and demonstration projects going on right now. Nature Energy, I know, is pilot testing one at one of their digester plants in Denmark. But more importantly, or not more importantly, but as important here, are big companies like Ørsted, who you may have heard of in the wind sector. Maersk in the shipping sector. They are all pushing hard for alternative fuel sources for transportation. Yeah, this is just one example of a project at a wastewater plant in Denmark. I'm going to skip fairly quickly here because I know I'm out of time, but this is one that I'll just share with you. There's going to be a very exhaustive study by the Danish Energy Agency on the climate and economic impacts of biogas plants, looking at co-digestion and land use and other things. So I can do some follow-up if anybody is interested in that. Biogas will continue to play a really important part in Denmark moving forward for a lot of the reasons that you see here. But there's still a lot of work to be done. There's a lot that Denmark can learn from other places. And with that, I'm going to stop and appreciate the time and look forward to chatting with you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Donc, je remercie tout d'abord la QPER de nous avoir invités à cette conférence. J'ai été assez surpris, très positivement, de la qualité du plateau qu'il y a eu d'intervenants. L'industrie québécoise est, je trouve, en pointe. Il manque plus qu'une petite étincelle politique, de mon point de vue, voilà, pour que vous puissiez enclencher, vous tous, vers un chemin très porteur en termes de réduction des gaz à effet de serre.
Peut-être commencer.
On va commencer. On va attendre que la logistique suive. Donc Nature Énergie, très rapidement, est une entreprise danoise, vous l'avez compris, à travers la présentation de Chris. Nature Énergie existe depuis 1979. Non, ça vient pas. Donc depuis 1979, on était une entreprise avant tout de distribution de gaz gris, ou gaz fossile, hein, comme on appelle ça aussi. On a fait le choix il y a quelques années de tourner du 100% gris au 100% vert. Donc ça a été une décision stratégique forte de la part de l'entreprise. Donc ça s'est fait dans une phase de transition assez rapide. On a mis l'accent sur une stratégie assez simple. Design, build, own, operate. Donc, conception, construction, exploitation, financement. Donc, le souhait d'une intégration complète dans nos activités. Oh, merci. Voilà. Donc aujourd'hui, on est le premier producteur européen de gaz naturel renouvelable. On produit à nous seuls 170 millions de mètres cubes de méthane annuellement, ce qui représente la valorisation d'environ 5 millions de tonnes de déchets produits annuellement, enfin traités annuellement. Donc ces chiffres-là tentent à montrer qu'il est possible, dès lors que des politiques incitatives soient présentes. Excellent. Voilà. Et en termes de, je dirais qu'en termes de salariés, aujourd'hui, l'entreprise compte 250 salariés, donc exclusivement dédiés à la production de biogaz. Ça, c'était pour le petit speech sur l'entreprise. Donc Chris l'a très bien dit, je vais pas me répéter là-dessus. Le biogaz, c'est avant tout une économie circulaire. On n'est pas là uniquement pour produire du GNR, on est là pour également intervenir en support du monde agricole. Et c'est en travers ça qu'on va travailler sur la réduction de produits, ce qu'on appelle phyto, réduction des engrais chimiques et une approche très agroécologique de la chose, à savoir que la biométhanisation n'est pas le seul outil, mais est un outil pour nous permettre de réduire les gaz à effet de serre. Donc on va travailler sur le travail du sol, par exemple, l'introduction de nouvelles pratiques culturales. Voilà. Donc cette économie circulaire, aujourd'hui, elle porte ses fruits. Et si on regarde l'intensité, ce qu'on appelle l'intensité carbone, là j'ai voulu mettre en avant le modèle californien, qui montre à quel point le GNR peut être une source bien différente en termes d'impact carbone. Donc là, vous avez tout en haut sur ce slide-ci, donc de California Board. Là, vous avez tout en haut de ce tableau un chiffre qui démontre l'intensité carbone du gaz gris, le gaz fossile. Et puis vous avez à peu près sur le milieu du tableau l'intensité carbone, donc vous voyez largement négative, des effluents d'élevage. Donc la méthanisation des effluents d'élevage, en particulier les îles et les fumiers. Donc tout ça pour dire que aujourd'hui, ce qu'on a constaté à travers notre étude de marché, c'est qu'on raisonne souvent au point de combustion. et que la chance qu'on peut avoir grâce à la méthanisation agricole, c'est d'avoir une intensité carbone qui permettrait de gagner énormément sur les gaz à effet de serre. Donc on ne parle pas uniquement du CO2, mais on parle aussi des protoxydes d'azote. Et donc, on a là un véritable outil pour la transition énergétique. Pour vous donner un ordre d'idée, au Danemark, le gaz que l'on produit sur nos usines a en moyenne une intensité carbone de moins 180 grammes. Voilà, donc c'est quand même substantiel. Donc notre modèle, vous l'aurez compris, est sur une base agricole. On travaille sur une base Design, Build, Own, Operate. Et notre gaz est essentiellement injecté dans le réseau. Nous n'avons aujourd'hui que très peu d'installations fonctionnant en cogénération, c'est-à-dire en production d'électricité. Pour ce faire, on a développé un haut niveau de compétences. On s'est dédié à la biométhanisation. On a travaillé uniquement également sur des installations de grande taille. Donc, vous allez le voir après dans quelques exemples. Grande taille, c'est aujourd'hui la taille moyenne de nos installations, c'est entre 400 et 600 000 tonnes an, sur un pays comme le Danemark. Donc on a des modèles de ce type également en cours de développement sur la France, avec des projets de 650 000 tonnes et 220 exploitants agricoles impliqués. Et on parle également de standardisation. On est des industriels avant tout. L'innovation, donc j'ai voulu mettre ce petit slide-là pour démontrer quelles sont les voies possibles. J'ai indiqué tout à l'heure la biométhanisation comme étant une brique technologique. Là, vous voyez tout à votre gauche, on a été dans les premiers à faire des unités de méthanisation pour produire des biofertisants pour la production organique, l'agriculture biologique. On a été également dans les premiers à réaliser du CO2 alimentaire, donc on a extrait le CO2 du biométhane, enfin du biogaz, pour faire du CO2 de qualité alimentaire, ce CO2 qui lui-même est ensuite utilisé dans les eaux de boisson, donc les sodas. On a également travaillé sur la production de microalgues et on travaille également sur nos propres stations GNV au Danemark, parce qu'on croit dans notre modèle et donc c'est bien de produire le gaz, mais c'est bien aussi de le commercialiser, le distribuer. Donc on a développé un réseau de stations et la photo que vous voyez là, c'est Copenhague qui est le plus gros hub en termes de stations de distribution de gaz renouvelable. Voilà. Donc on va passer à quelques exemples d'installations. Donc Korskrog, qui est pour nous une usine assez phare, puisque c'est une usine qui est capable de traiter 1 million de tonnes de biomasse à l'année. C'est une usine qui fait à peu près 22 millions de mètres cubes de GNR. Voilà, on parlait tout à l'heure de méga projets à 13 millions. Celle-ci en fait 22. Voilà, pour vous donner une idée. Videbeck, celle-ci c'est une installation qui fait 650 000 tonnes. On est à peu près également à 21 millions de mètres cubes de méthane, si ma mémoire est bonne. Midfun, installation qui avait démarré à environ 350 000 tonnes, qu'on a passé à 500 000 tonnes. Nordfun, donc Fun, c'est l'île qui est entre Copenhague et le Jutland. Donc Nordfun est une installation qu'on avait démarré également à 350 000 tonnes environ et qu'on a passé à 500 000 tonnes juste après 3 années d'exploitation. Voilà. Donc l'objectif là était de vous donner un aperçu de ce qui est possible de faire. Quand on a démarré ces modèles-là il y a plusieurs années, personne n'y croyait. Tout le monde nous a dit c'est trop gros, c'est pas possible, vous n'y arriverez pas. On y est arrivé, ça marche très bien. On a fait des extensions d'unités beaucoup plus tôt que prévu, puisqu'on les a fait environ 3 années après les mises en exploitation. Et aujourd'hui, le problème n'est pas de trouver le gisement, puisque les gisements au Danemark existent. On parle de 30 millions de tonnes produits chaque année. Il s'avère qu'au Québec, vous êtes à peu près sur 30 millions de tonnes d'effluents d'élevage produits également chaque année. Vous êtes 6,5 millions, ils sont 5,5 millions, et vous avez une agriculture et des fermes de taille comparable. Donc, les bases sont là. Vous avez un réseau énergie qui est quand même relativement fourni. Donc les bases sont là. Vous avez les biomasses, vous avez les réseaux. Voilà. Il manque plus que la petite étincelle politique.